The Federal Reserve's interest rate decision is expected in just a matter of hours. Fed Chair Jerome Powell will make the announcement at 2 p.m. Eastern time today. And ahead of this announcement, some strong words from President Trump this morning outside the White House. Here's what he had to say.
Now we have a man that just refuses to lower the Fed rate, just refuses to do it. And he's not a smart person. I don't even think he's that political. I think he hates me, but that's okay. You know, he should. He should. I call him every name in the book, trying to get him to do something. I've been nice to him. I do it always. I don't know how to sell. I've been so nice to him, fellas, you wouldn't believe. Let's have dinner. Too late. I'd call him too late. Come on, too late. Let's have dinner. I do it every way in the book. I'm nasty. I'm nice. Nothing works. He's like just a stupid person.
Adam here. What's up, guys? So what just happened? The most powerful economic official on planet Earth just looked the President of the United States dead in the eye and told him to go straight to hell. And here's the part that's going to keep Trump advisors awake for the next 48 months. He did it with a smile, with complete calm, and with the full knowledge that there isn't a single thing this administration can do to stop him.
And if I may, what happens if there's no Federal Reserve chairman confirmed on May 15th? Would you stay on?
So if my successor is not confirmed by the end of my term as chair, I would serve as chair pro tem until he is confirmed. That is what the law calls for. That's what we've done on several occasions, including involving me, and it's what we're going to do in this situation. And while I'm at it, on the question whether I will leave while the investigation is ongoing, I have no intention of leaving the board until the investigation is well and truly over, with transparency and finality, and I would refer you to the statement that was in the Fed's brief that you all have seen, and I won't have anything more for you on that.
Jerome Powell, the 5'4", 130-pound Federal Reserve chairman, has more institutional authority in his left pinky than the entire Trump cabinet combined, and he just proved it in a press conference that sent shockwaves through every central bank on Earth. But Powell wasn't alone. 24 hours earlier, the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court took his own turn carving into the president's attacks on the judiciary.
The Justice Department's criminal investigation of Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell has been dealt a significant setback. Now, a federal judge blocking a pair of grand jury subpoenas. In his ruling, Judge James Boasberg wrote that the government showed, quote, zero evidence to suspect Chair Powell of a crime. Now, Powell has been a frequent target of President Trump, a fact that played a role in the decision. CBS News White House correspondent Willie James Inman is traveling with the president in Florida. Willie James, good morning.
Kelly, good morning to you. The Department of Justice says it will appeal a federal judge's decision blocking part of a criminal probe focused on Fed Chair Jerome Powell's congressional testimony from last year.
Two of the most powerful men in American government, back to back, telling the most powerful politician in the world that his tactics won't work. This isn't a disagreement anymore. This is a constitutional confrontation playing out in real time.
On Friday, an unsealed ruling by federal judge James Boasberg said the subpoenas sent to the Federal Reserve were designed as a pressure campaign against Fed Chair Jerome Powell. In his blistering decision, Judge Boasberg wrote, "There is abundant evidence that the subpoena's dominant, if not sole, purpose is to harass and pressure Powell, either to yield to the president or to resign and make way for a Fed chair who will." In his order, Boasberg pointed to at least 100 statements by President Trump or administration officials attacking Powell.
Let me paint you the full picture of what just went down, because the mainstream coverage is treating these as isolated statements when they are actually something far more dangerous for this White House. Donald Trump has spent months trying to destroy Jerome Powell, not just criticize him, not just disagree with his policies, destroy him personally, professionally, and legally. He's called him dumb to his face. He's called him stupid in front of the entire country. He's opened criminal investigations alleging that Powell lined his own pockets with cost overruns from a Federal Reserve building construction project. The accusation was so ludicrous that even Trump's own Justice Department reportedly struggled to keep straight faces while filing the paperwork. But the strategy was clear. Embarrass Powell into oblivion. Humiliate him so thoroughly that he would have no choice but to resign before his chairmanship ended. Force him out early from his seat on the Board of Governors that runs through 2028. Give Trump control of the Federal Reserve by installing a loyalist who would print money until the economy drowned in it. It backfired, completely, spectacularly, in ways that are still reverberating through every corridor of power in Washington. Powell stepped to the podium yesterday for what was supposed to be a routine press conference about interest rates. The Federal Open Market Committee had just announced they were holding rates steady, a decision driven in large part by the chaos erupting in the Middle East and the impact on global energy prices. That alone was bad news for an administration desperate for cheap money to paper over its economic failures. But then a reporter asked the question Trump's team had been dreading. Are you staying or are you going in May when your chairmanship ends? Are you staying or are you going in 2028 when your board seat expires? Powell locked eyes with the camera. He knew exactly who was watching. He knew exactly what was at stake. And then he delivered the answer that will be quoted in every economics textbook for the next 50 years. He wasn't going anywhere. Not in May. Not in 2028. Not until the false criminal charges against him were cleared. Not until he was satisfied that the Federal Reserve's independence was secure. And then he twisted the knife. He explicitly referenced the possibility that Trump's preferred successor, Kevin Warsh, might not be confirmable by the Senate. And he made it clear that if Warsh couldn't get through, if Trump couldn't get his puppet installed, Powell would simply hang around as chairman in the meantime. Let that sink in. The Fed chairman just told the president that he would stay in power indefinitely if the president couldn't get his nominee confirmed. That's not a press conference anymore. That's a declaration of institutional war. Now here's why this matters so much more than the usual Washington drama. Trump has been systematically trying to capture every independent institution that might constrain his power. The courts, the Justice Department, the intelligence community, and most importantly, the Federal Reserve. Because the Fed controls the single most powerful economic lever in the entire government. Interest rates, money supply, inflation, employment. The Fed doesn't just influence the economy, it is the economy in ways that most Americans don't fully appreciate, and Trump wants control of it desperately because he needs cheap money, he needs interest rates at 1 or 2% to mask the damage his trade wars and foreign policy disasters are causing. He needs the printing presses running at full speed so Americans don't feel the full weight of his miscalculations until after the next election. But here's the problem. The Federal Reserve isn't designed to give presidents what they want. It's designed to give the economy what it needs. And right now, what the economy needs is exactly what Powell is delivering. Restraint, caution, independence from political pressure. The Federal Open Market Committee has 12 voting members, 7 from the Board of Governors in Washington, 5 from the regional Federal Reserve banks around the country. And here's the detail that keeps Trump strategists awake at night. The regional bank presidents are effectively chosen by the Board of Governors, which means if Trump can capture the 7-member board, if he can get 4 votes loyal to him, he controls all 12. He controls every interest rate decision. He controls the money supply. He controls inflation. He controls everything. That's why destroying Powell matters so much. That's why the criminal investigation was opened. That's why the personal attacks have been relentless for 16 straight months. Trump needs Powell gone so he can stack the board with loyalists who will do whatever the White House asks. And for a long time, it looked like the strategy might work. Powell is a modest man, a moderate man, a man who has spent his entire career avoiding confrontation and focusing on the technical details of monetary policy. Trump assumed that embarrassment would work, that Powell would shrink from the attacks, that he would quietly resign rather than face the daily humiliation of being called a criminal by his own president. Trump was wrong, catastrophically wrong, in ways that are going to define the rest of his term. Because Powell isn't just any bureaucrat, he's the steward of the most important economic institution in human history. He knows what his obituary is going to say. It's going to say that he stood up to Donald Trump, that he protected the Federal Reserve's independence, that he refused to bend when the most powerful man in the world tried to break him. And yesterday, he made sure that obituary would be written exactly the way he wanted it. But Powell wasn't the only institutional titan taking his turn at bat. 24 hours earlier, Chief Justice John Roberts delivered his own message to the White House. Now let me be clear about something. I don't trust John Roberts. He's the man who gave us the immunity decision. He's the architect of the legal framework that Trump has exploited to avoid accountability at every turn. He's Dr. Frankenstein, and Trump is very much his monster. But even Roberts has limits. Even Roberts has a line beyond which he will not be pushed. Trump has been attacking the courts relentlessly, not just individual judges, but the entire judicial branch. He's gone after the Supreme Court's right wing because they had the audacity to strike down his tariff program. He's attacked Chief Judge Jeb Boasberg for throwing out criminal subpoenas that were clearly issued in bad faith to go after political enemies. He's made it clear that he views the judiciary as an obstacle to be demolished rather than a co-equal branch to be respected, and Roberts finally had enough. At a judicial conference, in remarks that were carefully calibrated to maximize impact while maintaining judicial dignity, Roberts told Trump to stop. Stop with the violent rhetoric. Stop with the attacks on the judiciary. Stop undermining the very institution that stands between America and authoritarianism. It wasn't a political speech. It wasn't a partisan rant. It was the Chief Justice of the United States exercising his institutional authority to defend the courts from a president who would happily burn them to the ground. And then there's Judge Boasberg, the chief judge who looked at the grand jury subpoenas targeting Trump's political critics and did something extraordinary. He found that the entire prosecution was brought in bad faith, that the Department of Justice wasn't pursuing justice, it was pursuing revenge, and he threw the subpoenas out entirely. The Trump administration is now asking him to reconsider. But the damage is done. The record is established. A federal judge has officially documented that the Justice Department under this president engages in bad faith prosecutions of political opponents. 3 institutional leaders, 3 separate branches or independent agencies, all pushing back against the same president in the same 48-hour period. Chief Judge Boasberg gutting the criminal investigation. Chief Justice Roberts telling Trump to stop attacking the courts. Chairman Powell looking the president in the eye and saying he's not going anywhere. This isn't coincidence. This isn't random chance. This is the separated power system finally waking up and recognizing the threat it faces. And here's what makes this moment so dangerous for Trump. These aren't partisan opponents. These are never-Trumpers or Democratic operatives. These are the leaders of the institutions that make American government function. The Federal Reserve doesn't care about election results. The Supreme Court doesn't care about poll numbers. They care about their institutional integrity. They care about their constitutional role. And they've all independently concluded that Trump threatens both. The timing matters enormously. Trump is entering year 2 of his term, and the walls are closing in from directions he never expected. The Supreme Court gave him immunity for official acts, but the Chief Justice just publicly rebuked him. The Federal Reserve is supposed to be independent, but Powell just declared that independence in the most public way possible. The Justice Department is supposed to be loyal to the president, but a federal judge just ruled that its investigations are being conducted in bad faith. What happens next is going to determine the entire trajectory of the next 3 years. Powell made it crystal clear that he's staying until 2028 unless he's cleared of charges that everyone knows are fabricated. That means Trump can't get his board majority. That means interest rates stay where the Fed wants them, not where the White House wants them. That means the cheap money fire hose stays shut off, and Americans feel the full weight of Trump's economic policies without any anesthetic. Roberts made it clear that judicial independence isn't optional. That means every judge Trump attacks has the implicit backing of the Chief Justice. That means the courts won't fold just because the president threatens them. That means every legal challenge to every executive overreach will be decided on the merits, not on fear. And Boasberg's ruling creates a documented record that future accountability proceedings can build on. A federal judge has officially found bad faith in the Justice Department's targeting of Trump's critics. That finding doesn't disappear just because the administration appeals. It exists in the permanent record. It can be cited in impeachment articles. It can be referenced in ethics complaints. It can be used in every future legal proceeding involving this administration's weaponization of prosecutorial power. The fight over the Federal Reserve is particularly critical because it connects to every other economic story we're covering. The Fed announced yesterday that it's not cutting rates, especially in light of what's happening in Iran. While Trump was focused on attacking Powell, Iran was destroying 17% of Qatar's natural gas pipeline infrastructure, capacity that won't return for 3 to 5 years. Energy prices are spiking, gas pump prices are following, and the Fed's only one voter out of 12 wanted to cut rates to cushion the blow. That one voter was a Trump loyalist. The other 11 said no. They said we need to see what happens with Iran. We need to see how bad the damage gets. We need to protect the economy from inflation, not shield the president from political pain. That's what independence looks like. That's what Powell is fighting to preserve. And Trump's entire strategy for destroying that independence just blew up in his face. The next few months are going to be brutal. Trump can't fire Powell. The Federal Reserve Chairman serves a fixed term precisely to prevent exactly this kind of presidential retaliation. Trump can't intimidate Powell. Powell just proved that intimidation doesn't work. Trump can't replace Powell without Senate confirmation, and the Senate just watched Powell stand up to the president in ways that will make every swing vote Republican think twice before confirming a loyalist who would do whatever the White House asks. The institutions are fighting back, not with political arguments, not with partisan attacks, but with the only weapons they have: institutional authority, constitutional independence, and the quiet courage of people who know that their obituaries are being written right now and who refuse to let those obituaries say they folded when it mattered most. Powell will be remembered as the man who saved the Federal Reserve. Roberts will be remembered as the Chief Justice who finally drew a line. Boasberg will be remembered as the judge who stood up to a corrupt prosecution. And Trump will be remembered as the president who tried to break them all and failed. Year 2 is just getting started, and this is where the rubber meets the road. The institutions are awake, the independence is declared, and the fight over the soul of American government is happening right now in full view of everyone watching. Drop a comment and tell me what you think. Does Powell make it to 2028, or does Trump find some other way to force him out? I'll see you in the next one.